Hey guys, what's up? It's Hussein from ProTunerz. In this video, I'm going to cover the oil and water coolant line kit for ball bearing turbos for the L series. In the kit, you should receive 3 lines, 2 coolant, and the oil. Each of these will be individually bagged with the appropriate fittings for each of them. So for example, the oil feed here will come with these 3 fittings, and we actually put where they go to and the thread type, but we'll cover everything in this video nonetheless. So we'll start with the longest line in the kit. It will have a banjo end with a banjo bolt. Now when installing a banjo bolt, you want to put a copper washer above and underneath the fitting, then placing it on the turbo, but we'll cover that as well. The other end is a -6, and it will thread into our coolant, our thermostat housing kit. Now you don't have to buy ours, you could weld or tap yours, but it just makes it a little bit more convenient, and obviously it looks nicer. For example, here's one we have, and it does actually have a BPS port. You would just have to get a BPST to a -6. Anywho, the second line in the kit is the shorter line. This will go from the block side of the turbo, the side that's closer, I should say, to the turbo. It has a banjo end with a 90-degree and also a 90-degree -6. It also comes with a stainless steel 1/2-inch NPT fitting that threads into the block. Again, it says use sealer. We'll cover everything a little more. This is just an overview of everything. And it also comes with the oil feed and the appropriate fittings for it. The other parts of the kit, it comes with this really nice stainless steel 5/8 barb. Now, if you already have a turbo oil pan, I believe they're like 3/4 or 7/8 if I'm not mistaken, but they are bigger. That's because the journal bearings, they require a lot more oil and the diameter is bigger. On these ball bearing turbos, they don't need that much oil because the oil is just used to lubricate the ball bearing, versus the journal bearing, it lubricates and cools. These ball bearing turbos have coolant lines for a reason. So definitely run coolant lines on your ball bearing, or it'll cake up your turbo and cake up your oil, and eat up your turbo. And there's a 2-bolt flange here, and that's for the drain. So we'll start with first putting our turbo on our engine. And the reason for that is when you get your turbo, like for example this one here, it's not clocked in the right direction. You want your oil drain to come down at the bottom, let's say about 5 or 7 o'clock. Alright, so we're going to start cracking these suckers. So now that we have our turbo housings loosened on both ends, we want to get our right angle for the drain. As you can see, the drain right now is facing us when it should be facing down. So we're going to clock the turbo till it faces down. Alright, we're going to remove this guy. Where are we? That's a coolant fitting. And if you're looking at it from the top, I'm going to probably put it at 1 o'clock. And our compressor housing is probably going to come out right here. Give some room to clear the cable setup if you're running our intake. Sales pitch. Alright. Mind you, I don't have anything tightened. Just trying to get the right angle. You could, if you want to be a stickler, get it all done. I'm just showing you quickly on video. So we got the right angle. Looks good to me. And then we're gonna just snug up one of these on each side so it doesn't lose its spot. Alright, so we got our coolant lines right now on the turbo. If you've never done this before, you want to put a copper washer above and underneath the banjo. And this is another reason why I like doing this off the car, on the bench, is if you've ever tried to put a banjo with the copper washer there, it could be a little nightmare. Especially getting the right perfect angle for the banjo bolt. So it's just hand tight right now, and I would just leave it that way. We're gonna put our drain right now. You could do this later, but I mean, it's in front of you. So I would clock it on the angle towards the compressor cover, just because on this side you got a lot more going on with the wastegate and the downpipe and the shaft. So now that we got our drain pipe here for the oil and the coolant lines ready with the feed and the restrictor on there torqued down, we're just gonna leave it there ready. We're not gonna install it just yet. We're gonna go towards the engine and we'll get these fittings installed. So this one here is the 1/2" NPT to a -6. That'll go to the shorter line with the 90-degree fitting of the coolant line, and this is for the turbo feed. This end with the male thread will thread into your block. The one opposite to that is a BPST, and that is for your stock sender. Do not add NPT, even though they're close. Don't do that. It'll also come with 2 ports. The reason we did that is just to give you a better angle, and secondly, to cover the pressure sensors that are included in our MS3X, Haltech, and STM Pro kits. So the other fitting, or the last fitting I should say in this kit, is the NPT, 1/8 NPT to a -6. That will go to the turbo line, and this will thread to one of the ports. Now, I want to say before moving on, all NPT and BPST, you need to put some kind of sealer. So Teflon, I like using the Permatex stuff. It's pretty good with PTFE. And speaking of PTFE, these lines are all PTFE, stainless braided, and the coolant lines got also some heat wrap on it. I don't know if I covered that in the first part of the video. All right, so let's do it. We want to drain our coolant via the radiator. Then we're going to remove the stock plug, put some sealer, and thread it onto the block right here. We're also going to remove the stock sender and thread in the oil tee for the oil feed. I clocked it in this position. This way you could still have the pressure sensor thread in right here and allow you to, you know, have that reading from the ECU, or if you've set up fail safes. And again, the stock sender will go here, and we're gonna go right here on this plug for the oil feed. So we'll get that all ready. Once it's bolted, then we could proceed and put our turbo on. All right, so we got our fittings on the block and the fitting on the oil adapter. If you're not using the pressure sensor, you could go ahead and plug that with the plug included in the kit. Again, remember guys, NPT fittings, BPST, all tapered fittings require sealer. Now here's the oil feed threaded in, and we're gonna just tighten everything at the very end, and that's where I would probably hook up a P-clamp and just secure the line, as well as on the transmission bell housing. I've got the turbo in there. We have it clocked and all the oil lines in, threaded lightly before torquing everything down. Personally, I like 12 o'clock. That's how we designed the all the crimp angles on the lines. Again, they don't oscillate. We chose to go with stainless, because if you're wrenching on aluminum, it just scratches it. But mainly durability, mainly from the inside, because if you're really over torquing this guy here is stainless, and even if he was steel, he wins the battle. So you would scratch the compression seat in the AN fitting, and as soon as it scratches, it'll start leaking, and that line is pretty much garbage. So again, stainless steel, high quality, durable, and tons of air gap here. And that's why we chose to do this on the mock-up engine, just so you guys could see how all the fittings come in. And I would probably clock this guy before tightening it a bit downwards like that, and then torquing it down. The oil feed obviously just goes on the top there, and you get that torqued down. The longer line here would go to our port here on the thermostat housing. Alright, so now that we have our turbo clocked properly, the fittings all installed, as well as the banjo ends, we're going to go ahead and snug the turbo nuts there to the manifold, snug down the turbine housing bolts, as well as the compressor side bolts. For the oil feed, it's a compression fitting. You want to hand tighten that, and then a quarter to a half turn should suffice, as well as the AN on the, let me see if I could get this to focus, as well as the fitting for the oil feed. Again, hand tight, quarter to a half turn should suffice. For the banjo ends, you want to snug those down pretty well. Sometimes they tend to sway as you're tightening, so you want to keep the fitting centered. For the NPT ends, again, we're going to use sealer on the NPT tapered fittings that go towards the block. That includes the oil T adapter on the other side. You want to snug those down pretty tight. For the AN, again, hand tight, quarter to a half turn should do. The last part of the installation is for the oil drain. We already installed our gasket, the 2 bolts, and the drain on the turbo. Now we're going to install it on the oil pan. So this is a NA oil pan. You want to install it above your oil sump pickup so it drains properly. Again, common sense stuff. You could install it anywhere along this line, depending on the chassis you have and the steering shaft angle. You could choose wherever is going to fit the hose, and so you don't have any kinks in your line. But we'll talk about the kinks in just about a second if you do have that. For the oil pan, you would remove it. Again, if you have a turbo oil pan, you would just need an adapter to step it down, and you're on your way. You don't have to remove your oil pan. Alternatively, you don't have to install our fitting. You could weld your own, or you could install an AN and do an AN line if you like. This is just the easiest and simplest way to do it for most folks. For the fitting, you would drill a 22mm hole and obviously clean all the shavings out. You would install the fitting on the outside of the oil pan with an NBR washer, and then the washer and the nut on the inside of the oil pan. Snug that down, seal up your oil pan, and now you have your turbo drain ready on your oil pan. Now for the line, if you have any kinkage going on, you could use an easy coil here from Continental. This would stop any kinks. Alternatively, you could run a spring on the inside of the hose if you don't want it to show. But we prefer having it on the outside. That way you have the full diameter for the drainage. And that's pretty much the whole installation. If you guys have any other questions or something I didn't cover in this video, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Social media, phone, email, and thank you for watching.